When I was told I was the true heiress, I was already 45 years old, I was married and had 3 children. Before I could even step into the house, I overheard a conversation between my biological brother and the fake heiress. I don't know why we're bringing her and those illegitimate children back. She's been out there for decades. Who knows what she's become, what kind of man she married, and what kind of misfits she gave birth to. You're the only sister I have, a bastard, a worthless person. Are you referring to my son, who became a star across the country at the age of 20, or my twin daughters, who were admitted to the top university's elite class in their teens? At the age of 45, the police station informed me that my biological parents had finally come looking for me. When I first heard the news, I was stunned for a long time. I found out I wasn't their biological child when I was 20. My adoptive mother said that when she found me, I was still a baby who looked just a few days old. At first, they still wanted to help me find my family, so my information remained in the genetic database, but as time passed with no news, they legally adopted me through proper procedures. Now, many years later, I've been told that I was born into a wealthy family. Why would a wealthy family abandon a child? There must be some hidden circumstances that I am unaware of. My husband is currently on a business trip abroad, and my son is busy with his national tour. It was my twin daughters who specifically took time off from school to accompany me to meet my biological relatives. Mom, 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 a 15-year-old girl chattered away, and not long after we met, all I could hear in my ears was the repeated calls of Mom. It must be fate. When my son was 4 years old, my husband and I discussed having a second child, hoping for both a son and a daughter. If that wasn't possible, 2 sons would also be fine. After getting pregnant and going to the hospital for a checkup, we found out it was twins. I was on edge throughout the entire pregnancy, terrified that I might become the mother of 3 sons. It would be no different from raising 3 huskies at home. Fortunately, it turned out to be a pair of daughters. They are also quite lively, but they are adorable, 3 healthy and beautiful children, though raising them took a lot of effort. They have all been successfully nurtured into talented individuals. When he was young, his brother was taken to a film set by his actress aunt, where a director noticed him and gave him a child role. After that, he kept receiving acting offers. My husband and I saw that our son enjoyed it, so we let him pursue this path, thinking it would be good for his overall development in morality, intelligence, physical fitness, and aesthetics. Later, he also learned other talents and is now well-rounded in singing, dancing, and acting. As for the 2 younger sisters, they take after me and their father, smart, the kind of intelligence that clearly stands out among their peers, skipping grades from a young age, and now both are enrolled in gifted programs at top universities. Ms. Linda, please get in the car. It was the driver sent by my biological parents, and the car was a luxury vehicle. Natalie and her sister Nancy have often ridden in cars of the same class, but at this moment, they were still excitedly looking around and chattering non-stop. Mom, Natalie poked me, you're going to meet your biological parents. I heard they're very rich. Aren't you excited? Such is the nature of children. They've been studying for a long time, so they finally seized the chance to go out and have fun. They went to the Scott family's house with the mindset of being guests. But from an adult's perspective, if they truly valued the visit, they wouldn't have just sent a driver. My husband Jack sent me a message asking if I had arrived at the Scott family's house and also sent over some information about the Scotts. By the way, I sent several pictures, all of bags. He asked me which ones I don't like, so the ones I dislike won't be among the gifts he brings back for me. It seems neither of us took the family reunion very seriously, of course. If this had happened when I was in my early 20s, I probably would have felt a bit emotional, but I am 45 now. My adoptive parents raised me from infancy, and until they passed away one after another, no one ever came to claim me. I have already become a part of another family and have started my own. The pursuit of my original family has grown increasingly insignificant in my life as the years have passed. The Scott family's villa has arrived. I got off the car with my 2 daughters, and the person who came to pick us up was the butler of the Scott family. The butler looked at me with some surprise in his eyes but didn't say anything more. Second miss, allow me to show you the way. This form of address was also quite thought-provoking. Obviously, someone in this family has been called Miss for over 40 years, so I became the second miss. What's even more interesting is that the butler led us not to the main hall, but to what seemed like a side parlor in the villa. Before we even got close, we could hear voices talking. I really don't know why the old man and the old lady insisted on bringing her and those bastards back. They've been out there for decades. Who knows what she's become, what kind of man she married, and what kind of misfits she gave birth to. Having a sister like you is more than enough. If this matter gets out, who knows how people will talk about our Scott family. The butler cleared his throat. The conversation inside abruptly stopped. I was led forward to formally meet my blood-related relatives. There are 3 people in front of me. My 40-year-old biological brother, Lucas. I had known about his appearance earlier, and now that I see him, he truly looks like a capitalist nurtured in a wealthy family. Next to him is the fake heiress who took my place, Susan Scott. She is as elegant as most noblewomen. The last one is a young woman, sitting right next to Susan Scott, likely her daughter in her early 20s, Susan Scott. That should have been my name. It doesn't sound bad, but I don't have any strong attachment to it either. The fact that she and I were switched at birth can't be blamed on her. It's her biological mother who's at fault. It is said that she was a friend of my birth mother, Mrs. Scott, from decades ago. At the time, Mrs. Scott was happily married and had just given birth to her eldest daughter. While this friend had fallen into financial ruin, been abandoned by her lover, and was also pregnant. Driven by a stubborn determination to ensure her child would continue to live a life of privilege, she gave birth to the child, who also happened to be a girl. I don't know the exact details of how the babies were switched, but she took me away with no intention of raising me. Instead, she abandoned me. In those days, it was quite easy to abandon a baby girl. But even if the truth is revealed now, it's already too late. 45 years, more than half a life has passed. Susan Scott's biological mother emigrated abroad many years ago and passed away a few years back. Curious gazes fell upon me and my 2 daughters. I clearly saw the astonishment in the eyes of those 3 people. They had not taken the time to understand me, so they naturally assumed that the person arriving today was an ordinary middle-aged woman, even among family. After being separated for decades, they believed I must be common and unrefined, or perhaps filled with resentment and bitterness, but that was not the case. I am very satisfied with myself. Excuse me, are Mr. and Mrs. Scott not here? I calmly asked amidst this mutual scrutiny. Compared to siblings, I truly wanted to meet my biological parents more. Although that pair of siblings stopped their previous topic, they didn't seem to care much whether I had heard it or not. That kind of deeply ingrained arrogance, I've seen it in quite a few people before. Back when I was young, my career was just getting started. Nowadays, very few people look at me or my children with that kind of gaze. Mom and Dad aren't in good health. They're still at the nursing home today, but they should be on their way back now, said my biological younger brother, looking at me and finally introducing himself. I'm Lucas, your biological younger brother. He also introduced the person beside him. This is my sister Susan Scott, and the other is her only daughter, Sarah. The scene felt indescribably eerie. After a stalemate of about 2 seconds, it was Susan Scott who made the first move. She stood up, walked over, took my hand, and said earnestly, "Sister, you've suffered all these years." My gaze fell on her well-maintained hand, adorned with a very conspicuous pigeon egg-sized diamond ring. In contrast, the wedding ring on the ring finger of my left hand doesn't even have any small diamonds. It's plain and pitiful. It's not that life is hard, but thinking about the circumstances behind my background inevitably leaves me feeling a bit unsettled. "Sarah, this is your aunt and cousins. Greet them," I heard the woman holding my hand say to her daughter. Then the young girl, who was also dressed to the nines, spoke reluctantly. "Auntie." Her eyes weren't looking at me. Her arrogance surpassed even her mother's. It was simple. Her mother was the fake heiress, but she was not. The Scott family is undoubtedly the wealthiest in the area, and Susan Scott's husband is naturally her equal in social standing. Nowadays, Lucas is effectively the head of the Scott family, and he said, "We'll host a welcome dinner for you tonight. The butler will take you to rest in a moment." However, he kept me alone in the side hall for a few extra minutes. My own brother said to me, "No matter what happened in the past, it's all over now. My sister is also a victim. If it weren't for our parents suddenly deciding to have the whole family tested this year, we wouldn't have known something like this had happened." he said that after discovering the daughter they had raised for many years was not their biological child, my biological parents immediately filed a police report, and because my information had always been in the genetic database, they were able to contact me very quickly. The process of finding me was not difficult at all. In fact, it was quite simple. Compared to other families who have lost children, my sister has been with our family since birth. She's been a Scot for a long time, not to mention she's also the wife of the Perez family. The one who did wrong was her biological mother, not her. The bond between these siblings seems quite strong. I smiled at him and asked a question. She's the victim. So what has she lost in these 45 years? Lucas opened his mouth but couldn't find the words to say. I was the one who was abandoned and nearly died. I only said that much, but there's far more to it. Enjoying a life of luxury that rightfully belonged to someone else, taking over someone else's family, and as a result, receiving a superior education and an enviable marriage. A 45-year-long case of a cuckoo occupying a magpie's nest. How long can a human life truly be? How many people do not even live to see 45 years of age? If I have lived a life of displacement and hardship because of this, the 45-year delayed truth is undoubtedly a double torment, both mentally and physically. Can my good fortune truly offset the harm others have inflicted upon me? I met my biological parents in the evening. At first sight, I could roughly understand why the siblings had looked astonished when they first saw me. I look very much like my biological mother, Mrs. Scott. I could even see my own reflection 20 years from now in Mrs. Scott's face. Linda, my daughter, she trembled as she touched my face, studying me alongside my biological father, based solely on our resemblance. It was almost enough to confirm our relationship. The scene was somewhat sentimental, and even though I didn't care much, a tinge of bitterness welled up in my heart. They were all curious about my past, especially Ms. Rose. Her face, even with its fine lines, held an inexplicable hope. She hoped that I had been given to a good family by her friend, the one who was the real culprit. My adoptive parents found me in a remote suburb, and I was nearly dead at the time, I said calmly. The expressions of those around me shifted. Obviously, Susan Scott's biological mother never intended for me to survive and return to cause trouble for her real daughter. At this moment, Susan Scott and her daughter are not here. I briefly talked about my life over the years. Nothing particularly noteworthy, just being adopted, going to school, working, getting married, and having children as expected. In their eyes, it's a relatively ordinary life. Linda, I know you've suffered outside, but this matter shouldn't be made public. We don't want outsiders to make a mockery of our family. Chandler Scott, my biological father, spoke up. Although Susan isn't our biological daughter, she has been our daughter for decades and is now the wife of the Perez family. Her birth mother has also passed away. If this gets out, it will affect both families. He paused and said, we'll tell the public that we've taken a liking to you and have adopted you as our goddaughter. Bring your children back too, and your mother and I will compensate you in other ways. How does that sound? I hadn't even reacted when my eldest daughter beside me spoke up. If you never intended to acknowledge my mother, then why did you bring her back? Her tone was far from pleasant. Earlier in the afternoon, the two girls had been whispering, clearly unhappy with this family's attitude. Lucas's voice chimed in. Who gave you the right to interrupt when your elders are speaking? Where are your manners? He looked down on my daughter. In other words, he looks down on me. The two little girls rarely had their upbringing criticized. And Nancy also spoke up for her sister. You're being unfair and won't even let us say it. My mom is the victim, yet you're protecting the daughter of the perpetrator. Linda, is this how you teach your daughter? Lucas, feeling embarrassed by the retort, stood up and glared at me. I calmly looked at him. My daughters have been raised with good manners. They don't stay silent when their mother is being bullied. And you, what gives you the right to lecture my daughters, uncle? I was never raised by my biological parents. I turned to Rose and Chandler Scott. My daughters have never received any care from you, even as guests visiting today. There's no reason for us to be criticized and lectured just because someone claims the authority of an elder, is there? With that one sentence, the three of them turned pale and flushed by turns. Lucas, apologize to your sister. Chandler Scott glared at his son. Being over 40 and still being asked by his own father to apologize to others, this wealthy heir seems to have lost face. Did I say something wrong? All of this is someone else's fault. Aren't we the victims? Lucas said coldly. If you're so resentful, why did you even come back? Why come back? Good question. I'm not dwelling on whether Lucas apologizes or not. Instead, I look at my so-called parents and ask very seriously, what exactly did you mean by compensation just now? Upon hearing this, Lucas showed an expression of, as expected, and the disdain in his eyes became apparent once again. The elderly yet dignified couple remained relatively calm. Mrs. Scott took out 2 cards. Linda, this card has 5 million in it, and you can use it as you wish. The other one is a supplementary card from Mom, which you can use for your daily expenses. Also, if you're willing, you can move back home. Or we can arrange a house for you. 5 million, supplementary card, house. For the average working-class person, this might indeed be a sincere compensation, but from Lucas's expression, it was clear he didn't care about these things at all. 500,000, not even as expensive as the luxury car that brought me here, not to mention compared to the money they once spent on the 2 children. They didn't see a hint of joy on my face, nor did they see the expected reaction on the faces of my twin daughters. I smiled and said, I thought the compensation would at least be on par with what your other children received, like company shares or something similar. Lucas couldn't sit still upon hearing this. Linda, don't be so greedy, you just got back and you're already asking for shares. Isn't this what I should have gotten in the first place? I retorted, I heard Susan Scott has 5%, shouldn't I get at least as much as her? Dad, Mom, see, I told you she only came back for the Scott family's money. I found it amusing. If you don't want the money, why are you in such a hurry? According to the information I have, the Scott family is still under the control of Chandler Scott. The shares and equity in his hands have not been fully transferred to his son. Originally, Susan Scott was not the preferred heir in the eyes of the elders. Although she holds a position in the Scott family, it is merely a nominal one. And almost everyone assumed that the inheritance rights would primarily go to Lucas. My being recognized means there is one more person to share the assets. Susan Scott has no grounds to object, but Lucas does. Obviously, when it comes to personal interests, no one can stay calm. All right, Chandler Scott finally spoke up. Linda, take these for now. The rest can't be sorted out immediately. Let's first welcome you and the kids and get you settled in. This was a signal to end the topic. He didn't say he would give it, nor did he say he wouldn't, leaving a dangling promise that made one's heart itch. The Scott family's welcome dinner is merely a family affair. As they have stated, they do not intend to make my identity public, and naturally, they will not reveal Susan Scott's identity either. As people age, the rediscovery of their own flesh and blood naturally brings about some deep-seated obsessions. Besides, the image of me and their granddaughters is not exactly something to be ashamed of, but wanting a biological daughter and grandchildren to enjoy family happiness, and also wanting family harmony and prosperity, how can such good things be so easily achieved? I glanced at the people who had arrived. Besides my biological parents, there were Lucas and his family of 3, his wife and their son in junior high, as well as Susan Scott and her family of 3, her husband Bruce. The head of the Perez family was also present. The rest is just me and my 2 daughters. Neither of them is the least bit shy. Even in an environment where they clearly know they are unwelcome, they remain completely at ease. This is thanks to their personalities and the environment they grew up in. The Scott family chose to preserve Susan Scott's identity, partly to save face, and partly because they had to consider the Perez family, who had been their in-laws for over 20 years. Even though Susan Scott and her husband are both in their 40s, their interests are deeply intertwined, and they have a daughter together. Regardless of whether there was love at the time of their marriage, at the very least, the consideration of a well-matched union was certainly taken into account. At this point, revealing that the wife he married years ago is a fake heiress would bring shame to both families, so, weighing the overall interests, they decided to sacrifice me. The daughter who had just been found and with whom they had little emotional connection, at 45 years old, even if one is emotional, it's hard to believe in things like family bonds and blood ties as easily as in youth, making it difficult to develop deep feelings for them. It's probably that they are not easily fooled anymore. The dinner table was also quite interesting. It was a lavish feast, maintaining a ridiculous peace, using the happy occasion as a pretext. It was roughly a group of middle-aged people coaxing 2 elderly individuals, The Lucas couple undoubtedly did not welcome me. Their son and Susan Scott's daughter got along very well, sitting together, clearly forming an alliance. As for Susan Scott's identity, it really wasn't that important anymore. Even she herself was quite certain that her situation wouldn't worsen just because she wasn't a biological child of the Scott family, so they didn't really care about me, the so-called true heiress. Linda, I heard you have a husband and a son. Where are they? Why didn't they come along for such an important occasion like this reunion? This was Susan Scott's voice. I paused and noticed that everyone else was also looking at me. They're both busy with work and couldn't get away at the moment. I replied. Work? Helen, Lucas's wife beside her, exclaimed in surprise. Second sister, I heard your son is only 20 years old. He's already busy with work. Doesn't he even have a college degree? Indeed, he doesn't. That was the truth. That kid is only a sophomore in college right now. He's so busy with work that the leave he took from school is so long I'm worried he might get expelled. I saw some of them smile with unclear meaning. There's no need to have the child go out to work at such a young age. Why not let him come back to the family company and get a position arranged for him? Susan Scott's daughter, the quiet Miss Perez, spoke up at this point. Uncle's company requires at least a bachelor's degree for hiring now, doesn't it? Not necessarily. There are still some positions that don't require a degree. Lucas chimed in with his niece, glancing at me. It's just a question of whether my second sister would even consider those positions. If not, we could arrange for your husband to come in as well. I looked at the Scott parents, who were at the forefront. They scolded a couple of times on the surface, but it was just lip service, no need. I gave them a cold smile. They're fine just the way they are now. After that topic ended, another one came up. Sarah's birthday is coming soon, and the Perez family naturally won't treat the only daughter of this generation poorly. Her birthday party is entirely up to her. This somewhat internet-famous socialite invited quite a few celebrities and influencers to her birthday celebration. But some of the bigger names were harder to get. Right now, she's pestering her parents until Susan Scott nods and says dotingly, all right, I'll figure something out for you. Great, you absolutely have to get Justin to come. He's so hard to book, and it just so happens that his tour is in our city right now. I've already promised my friends. If he doesn't show up, I'll be so embarrassed. Justin, at the mention of this name, my two daughters and I exchanged glances. It was very strange. Bruce was right there and didn't object, but he added, chasing stars is fine, but do it in moderation. Don't follow others' example and try to date celebrities. Dad, what are you talking about? It's Molly who likes him. Didn't you tell me to get along with her? So, this son-in-law of the Scott family didn't say anything more. His status in the Scott family was not low, and he had plenty of common topics with his father-in-law and brother-in-law. As they were chatting, Lucas suddenly exclaimed in surprise, brother-in-law, when did you get connected with XY Group? Another familiar name, not exactly connected. I just heard that their group will be sending representatives to attend a business event soon, so I'm hoping to secure a collaboration. Bruce spoke modestly and vaguely, clearly withholding some information, but if he didn't say it, no one could pry it out of him. Lucas was still flattering his brother-in-law. If we could collaborate with XY, wouldn't the shareholders of your company be thoroughly convinced? Brother-in-law, XY Group, a company established over 20 years ago, experienced a period of rapid development about a decade ago, quickly went public in Hong Kong, and has since been thriving. Natalie and Nancy, the two young girls, had to step on each other's shoes under the table to barely hold back their laughter. Mrs. Scott then spoke up. Should Natalie and Nancy also transfer to John's school? The educational resources here are, after all, a bit better. Before I could respond, someone else spoke up first. It was Helen. Mom, John's school has excellent teaching resources, but are you sure your two granddaughters can keep up with the curriculum if they transfer here? What if they fall behind, and their grades and rankings drop? How would that affect the girls? This sister-in-law clearly doesn't want my daughters to attend the same school as her son. I smiled and said, no need. It really isn't appropriate to transfer schools like that. Who goes back to middle school after already attending university? Exactly, I think second sister is quite sensible herself, Helen said with a slight smirk. She was able to marry into this family, so naturally, she came from a wealthy background and didn't want her son to be bothered by some poor relative at school. After dinner, Mrs. Scott naturally arranged for the three of us, mother and daughters, to stay, including her granddaughter's family, who was clinging to her arm and acting coquettishly. Susan Scott's pre-marriage bedroom was still preserved, and her daughter also had a dedicated bedroom in this villa. As for me and my two daughters, we were accommodated in a temporarily prepared bedroom. They had originally arranged separate bedrooms for Natalie and Nancy, but the two little girls, who had so much to say to each other, ended up sharing a room to chat the night away. The family group chat is filled with their non-stop messages. When Jack and Justin finished work and checked the group, 99 plus messages, Jack called, "How does it feel to be recognized on the first day?" "Not bad," I smiled while looking out the window. The dinner was quite lavish. The man's voice on the other end of the phone also carried a hint of laughter. "I can see the two girls are practically fuming with resentment. How can you be so indifferent? Your daughter is even standing up for you." He chatted about some trivial matters, then added, "Linda, if you're not happy there, just come home. I'll be back in the country in a couple of days." "Okay." Not long after hanging up, there was a knock on the door. I went over to take a look and saw Susan Scott standing at the door. She was wearing a silk nightgown, exuding an elegant and serene aura. "What's the matter?" Susan Scott smiled at me. "Linda, I'd like to talk to you. May I come in?" I didn't let her in and raised an eyebrow. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here at the door." She didn't insist, though, regarding our backgrounds. "Although I did take your place, I was just a baby at the time and had nothing to do with my biological mother. Blaming me won't change anything. At this point, I can't possibly leave the Scott and Perez families. If I were you, I'd make the most of what I have now. The Scott family's resources are quite good. Even if you're no longer young, think about your three children. Their lives are just beginning. Do you really want them to experience high society only to be thrown back to where they started? Back to where they started? I thought I had seen all kinds of storms and challenges over the years, but this is the first time I've seen someone who usurped another's place be so brazenly shameless. She has nothing to fear, after enjoying so many years of wealth and luxury that didn't belong to her. She still has the audacity to offer me suggestions with the air of a benefactor, without a hint of guilt. This is not kindness. This is a form of lofty spiritual humiliation. It was something I should have rightfully had, yet I was subtly told to seize it. Utterly ironic. Moreover, the Scott family clearly did not put much effort into investigating and understanding me. The true heiress who was only found in my 40s, and naturally, they had no patience to learn about my partner and children either. If you're truly sincere, it's not hard to find out. They just subconsciously think it's unnecessary. I crossed my arms and looked at her. "Ms. Song, I don't quite understand the purpose of you coming to tell me all this, but I think, no matter what, you have no right or standing to say these things to me." Even if she was an unwitting beneficiary, so what? I have no obligation to be considerate of her. Susan Scott didn't say anything more. She gave me a look that said, "Ungrateful," before turning and leaving. Even her retreating figure exuded arrogance. This confidence comes from the various advantages she currently holds, not from any so-called blood ties. The two daughters in the next bedroom chatted late into the night before falling asleep, and early the next morning, they bid farewell to the Scott family and left with me. They looked quite surprised, probably having assumed we would cling to the readily available wealth like poor relatives. "How could we bear to leave? Linda, aren't you staying to keep Mom and Dad company?" Susan Scott's tone was disapproving. "They came back from the nursing home just for you. Mom was deeply depressed before she found you. You can't disregard your biological parents just because you have a problem with me, can you?" What a huge accusation to throw at me. "Natalie and Nancy have to go to school, and I have to work," I said calmly. "Everyone has their own things to do, don't they? Didn't I just give you $5 million? I saw my biological father frown. "What kind of job do you have? How much can it even pay? Just quit." Natalie and Nancy would be better off transferring to a school in this city, even if it's not the same school as John's. There are other good schools. In just a few words. "It seems they've already arranged everything for the three of us, mother and daughters." I took out the card I received yesterday and said with some surprise, "So this money wasn't compensation for me, but a fee to buy out my career." I placed the card on the table. "If that's the case, I don't think I can accept this money." The elderly parents clearly didn't expect things to come to this. "Mrs. Scott said, 'Linda, your father didn't mean it that way. It's all right, I replied. I'm still grateful to you for giving birth to me. It's just that after all these years, some things can't truly be set right. Besides, we all think it's better to keep things as they are. From now on, let's just treat each other as ordinary relatives. I'll bring my husband to visit you when I have time. As I was about to leave, Mrs. Scott looked as though she wanted to chase after me but was stopped by her children. Lucas sneered, "Mom. She's just pretending to be aloof and playing hard to get, waiting for you to beg her to come back. You and Dad don't owe her anything." Outside the villa, the driver I arranged was already waiting, though the car he drove wasn't particularly impressive. I don't mind staying at Scott's house for a couple more days, but Natalie and Nancy are only in their teens, and I don't want them to spend too much time in that kind of environment. They've had wonderful grandparents, so they naturally know the difference between genuine affection and insincerity. Among the Scott family, aside from my biological brother, everyone is superficially polite, but their naturally revealed contempt is not well concealed. I sent the two young girls back to school. Afterward, I made a call to my assistant to inquire about the group's recent project plans. The Perez family is indeed among the prospective partner companies. My assistant didn't understand my inquiry, so they asked, "Linda, what are your thoughts on the Perez family? Should we finalize or exclude their company among a group of similar prospective companies? Whether to cooperate or not depends solely on my word. I am the founder of XY Group and also its actual controller. First, check who is in charge of liaising with them and whether the procedures are compliant." I didn't say we wouldn't cooperate directly, but my assistant has been with me for several years and can generally understand my attitude. She quickly carried it out after listening, and soon the relevant information was sent to my email. "The matter of recognizing relatives is already over for me. Let's just consider it as getting to know each other. If we get along, we'll keep in touch often. If not, then so be it." However, within a couple of days, I received a call from my biological mother, inviting me to her granddaughter's birthday party and reminding me to bring the whole family. At this time, Jack had just returned from abroad. He patiently waited for the call to end and chuckled, "Inviting your biological daughter to bring the whole family to the birthday party of your adopted daughter's daughter." He had seen a lot in his life, but having grown up in a loving family and later meeting my adoptive parents, his in-laws, with both families getting along so well, he had never imagined encountering such a situation. I haven't decided whether to attend yet, but my husband and daughters couldn't wait to go and see the excitement. Jack nudged me, "Linda, take me to see the world, will you? As your husband, shouldn't I meet your relatives?" I glanced at him. Jack and I were born in the same year, and we've known each other for about 30 years. Back then, we were desk mates fiercely competing for the top spot on the honor roll. That year, I never would have imagined we'd end up sharing the same bed later on. At 45, Jack still has a great figure, hasn't gained weight, and like some ageless male celebrities, his appearance seems frozen in time. Of course, I know how hard he works in his daily life. I poked his cheek. "Why are you as gossipy as a little girl? Does he want to meet my family? He wants to go join in the fun." "My son said he wants to go too." Jack grabbed my finger and kissed it. I was taken aback for a moment, seeing the invitation Justin posted in the group chat. They treat Justin like a celebrity, formally sending him an invitation, while I only got a phone call to be informed. "Go on." I nudged him. "You're so old and still acting cute. Have you no shame?" The person in front of me gently kissed the side of my neck. "Sister, don't you like it when I act cute?" This phrase sounds familiar. During a business dinner, some clueless person tried to guess my preferences and arranged for a young, handsome guy to be by my side, showering me with attention. To be honest, he wasn't even half as handsome as Jack was in his younger days, but he was very sweet-tongued and had high emotional intelligence, clearly not wanting to put in any effort. I'm not interested in people who are about the same age as my son, but unfortunately, Jack came to pick me up that day. That young man is not on the same level as him at all. Jack in his 40s is still Jack. Just like how a Ferrari, even when old, is still a Ferrari, but he was still jealous. That night, he kept calling me sister in my ear all evening. Calling me sister at this moment felt like some kind of signal. I tried to push Jack away and open my mouth to say something, but I failed. Jack laughed and accused me. "What, now that the annoying ones are finally not at home, are you going to deprive a middle-aged person of their right to a sex life?" The annoying ones he was referring to were those three energetic kids. After the birth of his two daughters, Jack, in his early 30s, got a vasectomy, saying he was afraid of having more kids. I still took them to the birthday party of the Perez family's daughter. It was held at an estate. The estate originally belonged to Mrs. Scott, but it is said that after her granddaughter threw a tantrum, the estate was given to Sarah as a birthday gift. As for how I know, it's probably because someone enthusiastically added me to their family group chat. Inside, scenes of filial piety and maternal affection were playing out in various ways. Outside the estate, all kinds of luxury cars were parked. The Scott family didn't send a driver over. I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm not new to such occasions and originally planned to have the driver bring a decent car, as usual. But Jack seemed to be in the mood for drama and insisted on picking the most inconspicuous car from his garage. He even took on the role of the driver himself. Jack and I brought our twin daughters. My son's schedule is very tight. He said he'll come over later, and after the event, he'll go home with us. As expected, the four of us were stopped outside because we didn't have an invitation. The security guard checking the invitations was particularly strict and straightforwardly told us that the host had instructed that no one without an invitation could enter. The other guests who were entering at that moment also cast strange glances at us. At such an occasion, it's common for uninvited individuals to go to great lengths to get in, given the number of celebrities inside. However, it's rare to see someone bringing their entire family along, according to the procedure. I should be calling my birth mother right now. Although this is the Perez family's banquet, it was likely Susan Scott's idea to invite me. The phone call was made, but for some reason, it was never answered. All right, we can't get through, let's go back, I said to my husband and daughter. The desire to join in the excitement was genuine, but it shouldn't have been met with such a cold reception. Just as we turned and walked a short distance away, someone hurriedly ran out from behind us. Ms. Linda, please wait. We only stopped and looked back after the voice behind us called out a few times, and we saw a man in a suit running over anxiously, his demeanor very humble. Sorry, it was our oversight. We didn't inform the staff in advance. You are our distinguished guests, and I'll show you the way. Other guests were passing by nearby. I smiled but didn't move. And you are? I am the butler in charge of Miss Pay's birthday banquet, and my surname is Brown. You mean? The Perez family did invite us, and you were aware of it, but due to a work oversight, the staff responsible for checking the invitations were not informed. Is that right? That's correct. It was our mistake. Butler Brown wiped the sweat beading on his forehead. At that moment, my youngest daughter suddenly gave a mischievous smile. Uncle Butler, I just saw you watching the show over there. You deliberately ignored us and only came after us when you saw we were about to leave. Butler Brown was speechless. My eldest daughter added with a smile, you now represent the Perez family, so were you instructed by the Perez family to deliberately ignore the guests? The footsteps of the passing guests around them slowed down. Jack remarked, since you're not sincere, why bother inviting? Do the guests coming here know they might be turned away at the door? The father and his two daughters exchanged words back and forth. And the butler seemed to see a future where his job was on the line, so he apologized more earnestly. I sincerely apologize. It was my mistake. The lady instructed us to ensure all guests feel welcome. I hope you can be magnanimous and not hold it against me. Since it's come to this, Jack glanced at me, waiting for me to make a decision, then lead the way, I said softly. However, it didn't go as smoothly as expected. Just as we stepped inside, a voice suddenly called out from behind. President Chi. I paused for a moment, immediately let go of Jack's hand, and quickly moved forward with my two daughters. Leave him behind to be pulled into small talk. Soon, the phone vibrated with many messages of condemnation. I didn't do it on purpose. Those who recognized Jack might also recognize me. Let him handle the socializing. I'm actually curious to see why this banquet specifically invited me. The unwelcome and no longer young, seemingly worthless true heiress, but I soon found out. I overheard some young people whispering, is that the adopted daughter your grandparents recognized? She does look a bit like your grandma. What are they wearing? No brand names at all, just ordinary clothes. What's going on with your grandmother and the others? At their age, they're recognizing a daughter who's almost as old as your mom. What are they thinking? Aside from looking like your grandmother, I don't see anything special about them. I heard they were almost stopped at the entrance earlier. Could it be that they weren't invited and just forced their way in? Some people will go to great lengths to climb the social ladder. Maybe they even had plastic surgery to look alike on purpose. She may not be young anymore, but look at her two daughters. They're quite good looking. Maybe they can leverage the Scott family's connections to marry into good families someday. That would be a way to climb the social ladder. I originally thought the invitation came from Susan Scott, but now it seems more like the young lady of the Perez family wanted to support her mother, and Susan Scott simply agreed. How interesting. Just then, a few teenagers around my daughter's age passed by, led by John, my biological nephew. Someone beside him said, "John, is this your new aunt and cousins?" The eldest son of the Scott family, who was doted on, looked impatient and snorted disrespectfully, "I only have one aunt. No cousins, just a cousin sister. I'm almost 50 years old, yet I was publicly humiliated by a teenage brat. This kind of experience is quite rare for me. I don't mind, but my two daughters disagree." Natalie glanced around and looked at her sister. "Why is there a dog barking around here? It's so annoying." Nancy nodded in agreement. "Yeah, this dog has no manners at all," with just 2 sentences. The young man across from them flushed with anger. "Who are you calling a dog?" "Whoever responds is the one I'm talking about." Natalie laughed heartily. Why would anyone willingly take the blame? The young master of the Scott family had probably never faced much humiliation since birth. He glared fiercely at the two sisters. "What are you so proud of? If it weren't for our Scott family, your whole family would never have been able to step into a place like this in your entire lives. Outsiders don't know I'm the biological daughter of the Scott family, but he knows." As soon as these words were spoken, the attention of those around turned toward us. Those whispers were clearly directed at my mother and me, but arguing, debating is really my daughter's forte. Natalie laughed even more arrogantly. "Oh, so what? My mom can still compete with your dad for the inheritance rights in the future." Her sister quickly added, "Are you so afraid of us because you're really worried your dad won't be able to monopolize the Scott family's fortune?" As soon as these words came out, I knew exactly what these two girls were up to by insisting on coming, causing trouble for others. The Scott family publicly announced that they had taken in a married woman with children as an adopted daughter, and now they are trying to drain her resources. Now, what would other guests think if they heard that this adopted daughter is trying to compete with the legitimate heir of the Scott family for something? What kind of relationship would allow someone to contest inheritance rights? I don't care about the Scott family's wealth, and my daughter cares even less. But that doesn't stop them from taking advantage of the situation to stir up trouble. John is only in his 3rd year of junior high, while my daughters are already in college. Since they were young, their father and I have focused on ensuring they develop as comprehensively as their brother, in terms of quick thinking. Her peers really can't compare to her. "Auntie," a young woman's voice called out. It was the birthday girl of the evening. Sarah carried herself with the air of a wealthy heiress, her words and actions mirroring those of her mother. "John doesn't know how to speak properly. Please don't take it to heart, just do it for my sake." I looked at the young lady dressed so beautifully. Her entire outfit was worth no less than 5 million. Sarah, seeing that I wasn't speaking, continued. "John has been spoiled by his family. I apologize on his behalf." She hadn't finished speaking when a girl beside her interrupted. "Sarah, why are you apologizing? Someone doesn't know their place, causing a scene on someone else's turf, with no manners at all." "Don't say that, it's just a misunderstanding." The outspoken girl glanced at me again and said to Sarah without hesitation, "Is she really the Scott family's adopted daughter? Could she be your grandfather's illegitimate child?" However, the next second, someone nearby whispered, "But, she looks like Grandma's song." Sarah's expression changed slightly, and the girl beside her, who suspected I was Scott's illegitimate daughter, was also taken aback. Indeed, given my looks, even if I were an illegitimate child, I should be the illegitimate daughter of Mrs. Song. But as everyone knows, she only gave birth to a son and a daughter. If there had been an illegitimate child during or before the marriage, wouldn't that have been a scandal in high society? The people around fell into a brief moment of mental confusion. Sarah spoke again. "Auntie, I also apologized on John's behalf. Are you still upset?" As a result, the already indignant young man nearby glared over. "I'm not apologizing to her. I wasn't wrong in the first place, sis. You shouldn't apologize either." it's clearly her who came to take things by force. This shout drew the attention of the people around again. The girl next to Sarah frowned. Stealing things, could she really be an illegitimate daughter? In their circle, they probably all looked down on illegitimate children. Sarah smiled and said, "Of course not, my aunt is actually the adopted daughter recognized by my grandmother and grandfather." Then the girl beside her spoke with a tone of disdain, adding, "A half-baked adopted daughter who appeared out of nowhere dares to covet the family fortune. Is she that desperate for money?" She said it casually, then turned to Sarah and asked, "Sarah, you said Justin would come tonight, when will he arrive?" Sarah smiled at the girl beside her and said, "It's not confirmed yet, but his agent replied that he's free tonight and will come over specifically. You'll be able to meet and talk with him then." I suddenly realized who the girl beside me was, Molly. At the dinner table, the Perez family wanted to win over the person. She likes Justin. But I also know my son well. His usual schedule consists of film sets, concerts, and classes. He does participate in commercial events, but not too many. Since our family isn't short on money, that kid might be a bit proud and probably turns down many invitations. There are indeed quite a few young girls among his fan base. The two young girls, Natalie and Nancy, haven't settled down yet. Then she added, "Yes. My mother is the kind of adopted daughter the Scott family went to the police station to retrieve." Back then, when Chandler Scott suggested publicly referring to me as an adopted daughter, I didn't agree. Moreover, not caring about their opinions or the so-called property, I also paid no attention to my daughter's actions in seeking justice for me. The commotion here eventually caught the attention of the hosts. The couple, Susan Scott and Bruce, came over to understand the situation. Upon learning that I had allowed my daughter to speak recklessly here, Bruce's expression turned cold. "This is not the Scott family's home, and no one will indulge your antics here. If you continue to spout nonsense, I will have to ask your entire family to leave." In such a setting, being kicked out would be an embarrassing affair. I ignored Bruce and instead looked behind him. A vice president of XY Group was standing about half a step behind Bruce, looking at me in surprise. Upon hearing Bruce's intention to kick me out, I quietly shifted my steps, trying to create the impression that I wasn't close to him. Susan Scott was playing the role of the good person at that moment, gently advising her husband, "Bruce, don't be like this, just do it for my parents' sake." Most of the guests present tonight were either wealthy or influential, including important clients the Perez family was currently engaging with. Causing a scene like this would make Bruce lose face. The Scott family may tolerate others making a scene, but this is the Perez family's banquet. If something like this happens again, I won't be polite. Natalie, as if eager to stir up trouble, said, "It wasn't us who started the trouble. Talking behind someone's back is one thing, but saying it right to their face, isn't that just asking to be scolded? You were the ones who invited us, and now you're the ones trying to kick us out." "What?" Feeling guilty, the little girl's mouth was sharp and unyielding. As expected, Bruce's expression turned completely cold. He said to the waitstaff around him, "Please escort them out." Because of this statement, I saw many people's faces show a look of satisfaction, including Sarah John and the young masters and ladies around them. Even Susan Scott did not intervene anymore. From a slightly higher position on the second floor, I caught a glimpse of Lucas and his wife. They are watching the show. As for my biological parents, I don't know if they showed up. I smiled, with no intention of staying any longer. "Let's go." Upon hearing this, Natalie and Nancy put away their aggressive demeanor, snorted coldly, and followed behind me. Suddenly, the voice of my deputy general manager sounded from behind, addressing the host of the banquet, "Mr. Perez, thank you for your hospitality tonight, but as for the collaboration, I think we should forget about it. I have something to attend to and must excuse myself." "Mr. Lee, what do you mean? We were discussing the collaboration just fine." However, the response he received was the sound of footsteps quickly fading away. The next second, a voice called out from behind me, "Miss Linda, please wait for me." I hadn't gone far, and this voice was loud enough for everyone around to hear. Amidst the crowd's surprise, I was caught up to, "Miss Linda, I just came here on a business trip recently and happened to receive an invitation, so I only came tonight. I've only met President Perez twice," Vice President Lee hurriedly explained, distancing himself from the Perez family. Behind Vice President Lee, Mr. and Mrs. Bruce quickly stepped forward. President Lee, what did you call her? President Lee looked at the other party with some confusion while also stepping back to create some distance. President Perez. This is the founder of our XY group and the current chairwoman of the board, MS, Linda. You want to cooperate with XY, yet you publicly try to drive our boss away. I don't understand your intention. These words caused a change in expression on the faces of most people present. Is she the boss of XY? Bruce exclaimed in disbelief. How is that possible? Why wouldn't it be possible? She's been the boss for over 20 years, Vice President Lee replied. In recent years, I haven't been very involved in the day-to-day affairs of the company, having shifted my focus to other investments. However, it's undeniable that I remain the actual controller, a well-deserved boss. Susan Scott and her daughter beside them were even more stunned, as if they had heard something utterly unbelievable. Before they could react, several people around suddenly approached me. Miss Linda, I've long heard of your reputation. Here is my business card, if it's convenient for you. When would be a good time for us to have a chat? Miss Linda, I am Miss Linda. Among those who stepped forward were some competitors of the Perez family. At the same time, the voices of the surrounding people were not very restrained. Sarah didn't say that the adopted daughter in Scott's family was just an ordinary office worker. Why would the founder of XY Group suddenly acknowledge adoptive parents for herself? I smell some juicy gossip. I had no intention of lingering here any longer. I searched the crowd for the child's biological father, planning to make my exit, but just then, a slight commotion arose from the direction of the entrance. Someone let out a small scream. It's Justin. Why is he here? The Perez family really dotes on their daughter. I heard Justin doesn't usually accept invitations to private parties like this. He looks even more handsome than on screen. Is this really his natural face? It's so refined. Of course he's a natural. Didn't we all watch Justin grow up? He debuted as a child star. I watched the young man who had just entered the door pause briefly, his gaze sweeping around the room as if searching for something. Before he could find his target, he was already surrounded by people, mostly young women. This child debuted early and has a whole basket of mom fans. I often come across his moms online. A few girls who were just behind me suddenly rushed past, including Sarah and the girl who had just asked about Justin. Justin, I'm your fan. My name is Molly. I just went to your concert a couple of days ago. I saw my son staring at the young woman in front of him for a long moment, as if he recognized her. Are you the one in the front row of the intersection, wearing a colorful dress and appearing on the big screen? Yes, that's me. You remember me. The girl was so excited that tears welled up in her eyes, and she quickly asked if they could take a photo together. In principle, celebrities are not obligated to take photos with fans during private schedules, but many celebrities don't refuse either. Justin glanced at the situation and seemed to feel it was a bit inappropriate, as if it would steal the spotlight. At this moment, Sarah also spoke up. Hello Justin, I'm Sarah. I was the one who sent you the invitation. My friend really likes you, and if you're willing to take a photo with her, she would be very happy. Justin's gaze naturally fell on Sarah. After hearing her self-introduction, he quickly realized who she was. Out of politeness, he said, Miss Perez, happy birthday. Then, he finally looked up and saw me and his two younger sisters standing behind the crowd. Having a family member who is a celebrity can actually cause a bit of inconvenience in daily life. For example, sometimes when we go out with our son and sister-in-law, we have to gear up, just like they do. Over the years, as family members of public figures, our personal information has rarely been exposed, but it's not like no one knows. It's not exactly a well-kept secret. However, at that moment, in front of everyone, Justin called out in my direction, Mom, when it comes to stirring up trouble, the son is no worse than the daughter. The Perez family invited him over and offered to pay, but Justin didn't take a single cent. He just wanted to come. The three siblings must have secretly plotted something, but I knew that everyone's gaze was turning in this direction again, as if wondering who in this direction could make the celebrity call out, Mom, until that outstanding young man slowly made his way through the crowd and stopped in front of me and my daughters. Mom, then, many people looked as if they had seen a ghost, especially that young woman surnamed James, who had just claimed to be Justin's fan. Her face instantly turned pale. Obviously, you haven't forgotten what you just said to me in order to stand up for Sarah. Justin seemed to just realize there was someone else nearby. Uncle Lee, you're here too. When he was little, I also took him to the company to play, so some of the more senior employees know he's my son. Vice President Lee, Justin, are you done with your concert? Justin nodded, however. Susan Scott pointed at Justin and looked at me in disbelief. He's your son. I thought your son didn't even have a college degree and was working odd jobs. I nodded. He hasn't graduated from college yet, so how could he have a degree? Being busy with work is also true. At this moment, even Lucas and his wife, who were watching the commotion from the second floor earlier, came down after learning that I am the owner of XY Group, compared to the surprise of outsiders. These so-called relatives seemed even more unwilling to believe it all. Lucas stepped to the front of the crowd, seemingly recalling the times he had acted arrogantly in front of me, and looked quite uncomfortable. You deliberately hid it, waiting to see us make fools of ourselves. I looked at him inexplicably and even found it amusing. I've told you all, I don't lack money, and no one believes me. What? Wasn't it you who assumed I was living a miserable life? Lucas moved his lips but couldn't say anything. Linda, Jack's voice suddenly came from behind. Jack appeared with several executives, and they all came over to greet me when they saw me. Miss Linda, long time no see. Meanwhile, the three children beside me called out, Dad, to Jack. This undoubtedly revealed Jack's identity. He is my husband. Someone noticed my two daughters in front of me and exclaimed in surprise, President Jack. Miss Linda, these two must be your daughters, right? My son also started university this year and is an alumnus of both their high school and university. However, he's a bit less impressive. He got in through the college entrance exam. Your daughters made the local news when they were admitted. The person speaking was a CEO who had recently thrown a grand celebration for his son's admission to a top domestic university, something many people present were aware of. So someone asked, these two young ladies are in university? The boss said with a sense of pride, yes, they are the genius twin sisters from their school. Helen, who had not long ago insinuated that the sisters Natalie and Nancy couldn't keep up with her son's school education, was left speechless. Jack walked over and quietly asked, what's wrong? I didn't say much, only replying, let's go. They don't welcome us. Our family of 5 just left like that, and my subordinates came with us as the hosts. The Bruce family didn't even have the right to persuade us to stay, since it was they who had asked us to leave. However, this birthday party for the Perez family's daughter was destined to be a disaster. There are no absolute secrets in high society circles. Some rumors still leaked out. After all, I look too much like Mrs. Scott, whereas Susan Scott's appearance doesn't bear much resemblance to the Scott couple. It also helped that both families subconsciously wanted to belittle me. So they even spread the word that I had turned down the $5 million Mrs. Scott offered. Before my identity was clarified, most people thought I, as an adopted daughter, was insatiably greedy. After it was made clear, some people laughed. $5 million isn't even enough for their younger generation to take a stroll through an auction house, using that to compensate their biological daughter. They're not afraid of being laughed at. The funniest part is, they genuinely don't care about this amount of money. If I had a daughter like that, who brought back such an accomplished son-in-law and children, I'd have put her on a pedestal long ago. What's wrong with the Scott family? Are they afraid she'll come back to fight for the family fortune? So Susan Scott really isn't the biological daughter of the Scott family. She's been occupying the nest for over 40 years. If I were the real one, I'd be disgusted just looking at her. And look at their behavior. It's so undignified. That's not right. If there hadn't been a case of the cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest, or if they had found her 20 years earlier, the Perez family might have ended up in a marriage alliance with the current owner of XY. Why would they need to desperately beg for cooperation? Looking at it this way, the Perez family really lost out big time. Cooperation. No one dares to deal with XY now. It's also been said that the James family, especially the eldest daughter of the James family, has publicly fallen out with Sarah. She was clearly used as a pawn. The gun was even pointed at the mother and sister of the favorite celebrity, only to find out that the ones in the wrong were the people from the Scott and Perez families. In any case, the Song and Pei families have, to some extent, become the subject of gossip and ridicule. Some of these voices do reach Jack and me, but compared to the noise from the outside, our ears are now filled with the sounds of our 3 children calling, Mom, Mom, Mom. and Dad, it just so happened to be the weekend, and we had just finished our work for the time being. Work had stopped, and classes were suspended. The three siblings were making a racket at home, and Jack and I even considered going out to get a room to cool off. These clingy kids. Scott's family has been in touch with me all along. Once they knew my identity, it wasn't hard to figure out Jack's. When I met Jack, he was already a rich second generation, and the Thomas family has been thriving even more in the 20 years since he took over. I don't know what the Scott family was thinking. At first, they wanted me to accept the identity of an adopted daughter, but now they seem to be quietly allowing others to spread the rumor that Susan Scott is a fake heiress. My biological parents said they want to see me. They said they want those disrespectful younger generation members to apologize to me. Just the younger generation. Weren't their disrespectful words all tacitly approved by the elders? I found it amusing, but I still went to see them. This time, I went with Jack and didn't bring the children. After hearing Sarah and John's seemingly insincere apologies, my face showed little emotional reaction. The younger generation indeed hasn't learned to respect others, but it's not entirely their fault, of course. This family has become much more polite and respectful toward me. My biological father, Chandler Scott, took the initiative to bring up the matter of gifting shares. They understand that with my capabilities, I have no reason to covet the Scott family's company. By offering me a portion of the shares, I receive dividends. And the Scott family simultaneously establishes connections with both the XY group and the Thomas family. How could this not be considered a profitable deal, at this point? Lucas wouldn't dare claim that I'm only after money. As a scion of a wealthy family who has had countless resources poured into his upbringing, it would be nearly impossible for him to build a conglomerate like mine in just over 2 decades. If I had truly grown up in the Scott family, what chance would he have had when it came to inheritance rights? Linda, I know you hold resentment in your heart. It was indeed our negligence as parents that led to you being away for so many years. We understand that you don't like Susan, but she is innocent too, perhaps still hoping for a win-win situation. Chandler Scott spoke these words with heartfelt sincerity. Rose chimed in, that's right, Linda, both the palm and the back of the hand are made of flesh. Can you understand how we feel as your parents, after all? She is a daughter raised with genuine care and resources. It's hard to let go. Jack spoke up at this moment. I have some documents here. You two can take a look first before we continue. He handed over the file folder and waited until Chandler Scott opened it and took out the documents before speaking again. This information was also something I came across by chance. It records some of Ms. Susan Scott's bank transaction records. The records show that Ms. Susan Scott started transferring money to one account from the age of 18. A few years later, after she got married, she began transferring funds to another overseas account. The amounts were not small, and this continued until a few years ago. The account was registered under the name Lena, who is her biological mother. Jack paused for a moment. So I have reason to suspect that your adopted daughter knew the truth at least as early as when she was 18, concealed it, and supported her biological mother for nearly 20 years. After these words, Susan Scott, who had been feigning innocence beside them, suddenly froze. Judging by the expressions of her husband and daughter, they clearly hadn't expected this either. As for the elderly couple of the Scott family, they looked utterly blank. You're just talking nonsense, slandering me with baseless accusations. Susan Scott stood up, looking at me and Jack with agitation. Are you two conspiring to frame me? I watched her indifferently, then glanced at Scott's parents who were flipping through the documents, and said calmly, if you think we tampered with the evidence, you're welcome to investigate it yourselves. If anyone is willing to prove their innocence, they can do so. If I've wronged you, I'll apologize. If I haven't wronged you, I said leisurely, when you found out I was still alive, did you feel guilt, or did you think your birth mother, who only cared about money before she died, was useless? She couldn't even manage to kill a baby. Susan Scott tried to say something, but under her parents' suspicious gazes, she couldn't maintain her usual composure. Tears welled up in her eyes. Dad, Mom, don't you believe me either? All of this is fake, fabricated. I had no interest in watching her performance. Whether others believed me or not no longer mattered to me. While Susan Scott was still acting out her innocence, Jack and I stood up and took our leave. Under the glaring evidence, even the most skillful performance is futile. Once they realized the daughter at home was not their biological child, finding me was actually simple because my information has always been there. The parents in the Scott family who still hold the decision-making power firmly believe that if they had brought me back when I was 18, my relationship with them would not have been so distant. That is indeed possible, if it were a still immature child. They would certainly be willing to invest money and time in nurturing them, especially emotionally, but that year, my adoptive parents were still alive, and I definitely did not want to leave them. Susan Scott later had no way to deny it and could only tearfully explain her state of mind when she first learned the truth from her biological mother. She said that because the other party was certain that the Scott family's biological daughter had died, she did not dare to reveal this truth and was afraid that her longtime family would abandon her if the truth came out. That was why she was threatened by her biological mother into sending her money. But so what? She did indeed keep this secret hidden for 27 years. Susan Scott's situation in the Scott family became extremely awkward, and even her daughter had to face her mother's despicable side. Shortly after, she lost the support of the Scott family. News of her husband's illegitimate children followed. Yes, Bruce had a mistress, as well as sons and daughters. The only daughter Susan Scott gave birth to was not only not the only child, but not even the only daughter. In the past, the Scott family had her back, so the Perez family naturally wouldn't offend their in-laws. Now, they've started testing the limits. Susan Scott couldn't afford to lose her status as Mrs. Perez. She made a fuss, but she didn't have the confidence to make a big scene. Bruce looked down on his wife for not being a true heiress and resented her even more for causing him to lose several business deals, which led his company into a decline. Later, I actually heard that this Mr. Perez, when drunk, once rambled on about how his wife should have been a powerful and influential businesswoman. If she were truly a formidable businesswoman, he should have been finished the moment she dared to have an illegitimate child outside. The Scotts have spared no effort in trying to build a connection with me, but what's lost is lost. Our first impressions of each other weren't great, so why force it? Lucas doesn't have the ability to carry on the Scott family legacy. He even finally remembered that he and I are siblings from the same parents, hoping to leverage that to gain some resources from XY and the Thomas family. Ridiculous. Do Jack and I look like fools? The Scott family also seems to be on a downward trajectory, and their decline appears to be only a matter of time, unless the decision-makers are sharp enough about the market. But Lucas is not that kind of person. I don't live in their city long-term, I just happen to own property there. Once this so-called family reunion matter is over, we'll go back. Our son will continue his career in the entertainment industry, and our daughters will continue their studies. We both still have plenty of energy to continue striving in our careers, just in time. An internet meme went viral saying that the 40s are the perfect age to take on challenges. Our internet-savvy daughter forwarded it to the family group chat to motivate her successful parents and aunt. The aunt was speechless. The child's aunt sent messages to me and Jack overnight, telling us not to push ourselves too hard. Extra. High school. I had a desk mate who had good grades but was spoiled. He was a boy, good-looking, and had excellent handwriting, but I don't really like him. He's very popular, and sometimes when I step away during break to use the restroom, my seat gets taken by one of his close friends. Later, he seemed to notice that I was annoyed. When his friends came over again, he would just get up and go out to chat with them. Also, he has good grades. Every time I see my name below his on the rankings, I secretly make up my mind to surpass him. After all, being number one feels really great. Once again, second place. I stared at my mistakes, lost in thought, while Jack showed his concern for his desk mate. Linda, let me explain this problem to you. Wow, he's challenging me. Finally, I got first place. I glanced at Jack's test paper and challenged him back. So, do you need me to clear things up for you, Jack? Thank you. According to the person involved, at the time, he thought we had a mutual admiration and were kindred spirits. I was speechless. Back then, as soon as I got home from school, I loudly complained to my parents. My desk mate kept provoking me. After hearing the whole story, my parents were speechless. My mom, this child. My dad muttered quietly, being a bit slow-witted is good, at least it prevents early romance. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.